The face stared up from the peat, eyes closed, lips drawn back. It should have been bone after so long. It was not. The skin held its shape. When we tried to lift it free, the jaw moved. A sound came from the throat that had not drawn breath in 1,000 years. I still remember the cold rain on my face that spring in 1847, and how it never stopped long enough for clothes to dry. We were in the bog country of County Mayo, where nothing grew anymore. We dug peat because we had no other fuel left to burn. The fields had turned black the previous autumn. Every potato in the ground rotted before harvest. The smell reached us before we saw the damage. It was a thick, sweet rot that clung to the air and would not leave. We dug the first plants in September and found them collapsed into black slime. We dug more, moving across the field with desperate speed. Every plant was the same. By October, the entire parish knew. The crop had failed. Landlords still demanded rent. Shops still required payment. But there was no harvest to sell and no money to buy food with. Families began consuming their seed potatoes. Then they sold their tools. Then their furniture. Then their clothes. By winter, families began leaving their cottages and walking toward the workhouses or the coast. The workhouses filled beyond capacity. Fever spread through the crowded rooms. The coast offered no relief. Ships waited in the harbors, but passage required money we did not have. Some did not make it to either destination. We found them along the roads, curled against stone walls, their bodies thin and cold. The crows came for them first, then the dogs. My family stayed because we had nowhere else to go. My father was too weak to travel. The hunger had taken his strength before winter arrived. He could no longer work the fields. He could barely walk from the cottage to the well. My mother could not carry my younger sister more than a few hundred yards before her legs gave out. My sister was 6 years old. She had stopped growing. Her arms were thin as kindling. We remained in our cottage near the bog and ate what we could find. Nettles boiled with salt when we had salt. Grass that we chewed until our gums bled and our teeth loosened. Roots we dug from the edges of streams, bitter and tough, that sat heavy in our stomachs and brought no strength. We boiled leather scraps from old boots. We scraped moss from stones and tried to swallow it. My brother Declan killed a crow once with a thrown rock. We plucked it and boiled it for 2 hours. The meat was dark and stringy and tasted of rot. We ate it anyway. My sister could not keep it down. She vomited into the fire and we lost what little heat we had. The landlord's agent came in early spring and told us the rent was still due. My father offered to work it off. The agent said there was no work. He said we could cut peat and sell it, but the price had dropped because no one had money to buy fuel. He left without taking anything because there was nothing left to take. We went to the bog the next morning. My father, my uncle Seamus, my older brother Declan, and myself. My mother stayed with my sister and kept a small fire burning with the last of our dry wood. The walk took an hour. None of us spoke. We had learned that speaking used energy we could not spare. The rain started before we reached the cutting site and did not stop. It was a thin, cold rain that soaked through wool and never let the skin dry. The kind of rain that Ireland gave without mercy in those years. The bog stretched flat and dark under a low sky. Water pooled in the old cuts where other families had worked the year before. Some of those families were gone now, dead or emigrated, or simply vanished into the countryside. Their peat lay stacked in uneven mounds, too wet to burn, too heavy to move. Black water filled the deeper cuts, still and opaque. We walked to a section that had not been worked and set down our tools. The ground beneath our feet was spongy and unstable. Each step sank several inches before finding resistance. The smell of the bog rose around us, thick and organic, the smell of things breaking down into their basic elements. My father carried a slane, a long, narrow spade with a wing on one side for cutting peat blocks. The handle was worn smooth by decades of use. It had belonged to his father before him. Declan had a second slane we borrowed from a neighbor who no longer had the strength to use it. The neighbor had given it to us without asking when we would return it. He knew he would not live long enough to need it again. Seamus brought a basket woven from willow branches and a short blade for trimming the blocks. I carried rope and a sack for bundling. The rope was old and frayed. The sack had holes worn through from use. We made do with what we had. We worked in silence. The rhythm was simple and old, passed down through generations. Cut down through the surface layer, pry the block free, lift it onto the bank, stack it to dry, move to the next cut, repeat until the light failed or your body gave out. My father moved slowly. His hands shook when he gripped the handle. He had to stop every few cuts to catch his breath. His face had gone gray. The skin hung loose on his frame. Declan tried to work faster to make up for it, but his cuts were uneven, and the blocks broke apart when we tried to lift them. Broken peat was worthless. It crumbled to dust and would not burn. By midday, we had a small pile, perhaps 20 blocks. Not enough to sell for any real money, barely enough to keep our own fire burning for a week. The rain grew heavier. Water ran down our faces and soaked through our wool shirts until they clung to our ribs. My boots filled and squelched with each step. Seamus said we should stop and come back when the weather cleared. My father shook his head. He said we needed fuel, and we needed it now. He did not say what we all knew, that if we went home, now, we might not have the strength to come back. We kept working. The peat came up in dark brown chunks, dense and heavy with trapped water. It smelled of earth and old decay and something else beneath that, something ancient and mineral. Some blocks had roots tangled through them, pale and fibrous, from plants that had grown and died centuries before. Others had fragments of wood from trees that grew there when the bog was still a forest. The wood was black and hard as stone. It was Declan who found it. He drove the slane down into a fresh section and stopped. The blade had met resistance that was not peat. He pulled it free and examined the edge. Something pale was caught there. He bent close and brushed it with his fingers. Then he called my father over, without raising his voice. There was something in his tone that made us all stop working. My father knelt in the wet peat beside him. He set down his slane and brushed away the surface layer with his hand, slowly and carefully. The peat was softer here, almost like mud. It came away in clumps. A hand appeared. It was brown and leathery, the color of old leather or dried tobacco. The fingers were curled inward toward the palm. The nails were intact, yellowed and thick. The skin looked whole, unbroken by time or decay. There were lines across the palm, deep creases that looked fresh. Seamus crossed himself and stepped back from the edge of the cut. His lips moved, but he made no sound. Declan stared without moving, his own hand frozen where he had been reaching to clear more peat. I felt my chest tighten. The rain continued to fall, but the sound seemed distant now. My father reached down and touched the wrist. He pressed his thumb against where the pulse should be. He held it there for several seconds. The flesh was firm and cold, like clay that had been left in a cellar. He said it was a bog body, preserved by the peat. He said it had been there a long time. His voice was steady, but I saw his hand tremble when he pulled it back. We had heard of such things. The old men in the village spoke of bodies found in the bogs, people from ancient times who had fallen in or been placed there by their own kin or enemies. The peat kept them from rotting. The acids in the water and the lack of air turned them into something between leather and stone. Some looked as though they had died only days before, though they had lain there for centuries. The old men said these bodies still carried memory in their skin, that they dreamed beneath the earth. My father told Declan to keep cutting around it. We needed to see how deep it went. We needed to know if it was complete or if only the hand remained. Declan worked carefully, slicing away thin layers of peat with the edge of his blade. More of the arm appeared, inch by inch. Then the shoulder, broad and thick. Then the chest. The body was large, larger than any man I had seen, and I had seen tall men. The torso was broad enough that I could not have wrapped my arms around it. The ribs showed through the preserved skin, but they were massive, each one as thick as my wrist. The skin was dark brown with a waxy texture that caught the rain and shed it in beads. There were no clothes, only bare skin marked by shallow grooves and old scars. Some of the scars looked deliberate, cut in patterns that might have meant something once. The head remained buried. My father said we should uncover the face. He said we needed to see it all. Seamus argued against it. He said we should leave it where it was and move to another section. He said nothing good came from disturbing the dead. My father said it was too late. The body was already exposed. If we left it now, someone else would find it and think we had killed a man and hidden him in the bog. The authorities would come. We would be accused. We could not afford that kind of attention. We worked together, scraping peat away from the head with our hands. The texture was different here, softer and wetter, as if the bog had not finished its work. The hair came first, long and matted, still holding its shape. It was dark red, almost black in the rain. Then the forehead, wide and flat, with a deep line across the center. Then the eyes. The face stared up from the peat, eyes closed, lips drawn back. It should have been bone after so long. It was not. The skin held its shape. The expression was frozen in something that was not quite anger and not quite pain. The mouth hung open. Teeth showed, worn and yellowed, but complete. We stood around it in the rain and said nothing for a long time. Then my father told us to lift it out. He said we would take it to the village and let the priest decide what to do with it. Declan and I slid our hands under the shoulders. Seamus took the legs. My father steadied the head. We lifted together. The body came free with a wet sucking sound. When we tried to lift it free, the jaw moved. It was a small movement, just a slight drop and then a close. We all saw it. Declan let go and stepped back. The body sagged in our grip. Seamus swore and tightened his hold on the legs. My father did not move. He stared at the face with his mouth pressed into a thin line. A sound came from the throat that had not drawn breath in 1,000 years. It was low and rasping, like air forced through a narrow passage. The chest did not rise. The eyes stayed closed, but the sound came again, longer this time, and the jaw opened wider. We dropped it. The body hit the bank and rolled onto its side. Peat smeared across the torso. One arm fell across the face. We backed away, slipping in the mud, breathing hard through clenched teeth. My father said it was trapped air. He said the pressure of moving the body forced gas out of the lungs. He said it happened with corpses sometimes. He said it was not alive, but he did not step forward to prove it. Seamus said we should go. He said we should leave the body and tell no one. He said the bog could keep. It's dead. Declan agreed. I said nothing. I watched the body lying on its side with one arm draped over the face. It did not move again. My father bent and picked up his slain. He said we would cover it back up. He said we would pile peat over it and leave no sign we had been there. He said we would work another section and forget what we had seen. We turned to gather our tools. Behind us, the body sat up. I heard the wet scrape of it first. Then Declan's breath caught. I looked back and saw it upright, legs folded under it, arms hanging at its sides. The head tilted forward. Peat dripped from the shoulders. The eyes were still closed. Then they opened. They were pale, almost white, with no visible pupils. They did not blink. They moved across each of us in turn, slow and deliberate. When they fixed on my father, the mouth opened again. This time, sound shaped into something close to words. The language was old. I did not understand it, but the tone carried weight. It was not a question. It was a command. My father dropped the slain and ran. We followed. Declan went first, stumbling through the shallow water pooled between the cuts. Seamus came after him, arms pumping, boots throwing mud. I went last, looking back every few steps. The body rose to its feet. It moved slowly, joints stiff from centuries of stillness. It took one step, then another. Each step was heavier than the last. It did not run. It did not need to. We reached the edge of the bog and kept going. The path back to the village was narrow and slick with rain. My father led us, moving faster than I had seen him move in months. His breath came in short gasps. He did not look back. Behind us, the footsteps continued. Steady, unhurried, close enough to hear but never close enough to see clearly. When we glanced over our shoulders, we reached the first cottage at the edge of the village. My father pounded on the door. No one answered. He tried the next cottage. The door was barred from inside. A voice called out, weak and hoarse, telling us to go away. Declan pointed toward the old church at the center of the village. We ran toward it. The door was open. We fell through and slammed it shut behind us. My father threw the bolt. We leaned against the wood, chests heaving, water dripping onto the stone floor. The church was cold and empty. The priest had left weeks before, gone to the workhouse to tend to the dying there. The pews were gone, taken for firewood. Only the altar remained, bare and chipped. We waited in the dark and listened. Rain drummed on the roof. Water ran down the walls where the thatch had rotted through. For a long time, there was no other sound. Then, we heard it outside. The slow scrape of footsteps on stone. A wet, heavy tread. It circled the church once, then stopped at the door. 3 slow knocks. My father pressed his back against the wood. Seamus moved to the small window near the altar and looked out. He said he could not see anything. He said the rain was too heavy, but his hands shook when he gripped the stone sill. The knocks came again. Louder. The door shuddered, but the bolt held. Then the voice came, muffled through the wood. It spoke the same old language. The tone was different now. Not a command, a question. It repeated 3 times, each time a little clearer. My father whispered that it was asking for something. He said he did not know what. He said we should stay silent and wait for it to leave. It did not leave. The door shook harder. The bolts scraped against the wood. Declan grabbed a broken piece of the altar and held it like a club. I picked up a stone from the floor. Seamus stood at the window and watched. The door split down the center. The bolt held, but the wood gave way. A hand reached through the gap. It was the same brown, leathery hand we had pulled from the peat. It groped along the inside of the door, feeling for the bolt. My father shoved his sling through the gap and struck the arm. The blade bit deep, but did not cut through. The hand pulled back, taking the sling with it. The door shook once more, and then went still. We waited. Minutes passed. The rain continued. No other sound came from outside. Seamus moved back to the window. He said it was gone. He said he could see the path to the village, and nothing moved there. My father said we would wait until full dark, then leave through the back and make our way home by a different route. We sat on the cold floor and tried to calm our breathing. Declan asked what it was. My father said he did not know. Seamus said it was a punishment. He said we had disturbed something that should have stayed buried. He said the dead did not rest easy in the bogs. I asked if it would follow us home. No one answered. We left the church near midnight. The rain had lessened to a drizzle. The village was dark. No lights showed in any of the cottages. We moved between the buildings, keeping to the shadows, listening for any sound that did not belong. The path home took us along the edge of the bog. My father said we should stay clear of it, take the longer route through the fields. Declan said the fields were flooded. We had no choice. We walked in single file, my father in front, me at the rear. The bog lay silent and black to our right. The rain pattered on the water pooled in the old cuts. Nothing else moved. Halfway home, Seamus stopped. He pointed toward the bog. At first, I saw nothing. Then I made out a shape standing at the edge, tall and still, facing toward us. We walked faster. The shape moved parallel to us, keeping the same distance. When we stopped, it stopped. When we moved, it moved. My father said not to look at it. He said we were almost home. He said we would bar the door and keep the fire burning, and it would not be able to reach us. We reached the cottage and rushed inside. My mother met us at the door, her face pale and drawn. She asked where we had been. My father told her to bar the door and shutter the window. He did not explain why. We sat by the fire and said nothing. My sister slept in the corner, her breathing shallow and quick. My mother asked again what had happened. My father told her we had found something in the bog. He said it was better if she did not know more. The knock came an hour later. 3 slow strikes on the door, heavy and deliberate. My mother's hand went to her mouth. Declan gripped the handle of a knife. Seamus moved to the shuttered window, but did not open it. The knock came again. My father stood and walked to the door. He called out, asking who was there. The voice answered in that same old tongue. My father shook his head. He said he did not understand. The voice repeated itself, louder. Then my mother spoke. She said she understood some of it. She said her grandmother had taught her fragments of the old language, words passed down from before the English came. She said the voice was asking for sustenance. It said it had woken to a land of hunger and death. It said it would take what it needed. My father asked what that meant. My mother said it meant the creature fed on the dying. She said it had come because it sensed famine. She said it would not leave until it had taken its fill. The door shook. The bar held, but the frame began to splinter. Declan moved to brace it with his shoulder. My father told my mother to take my sister and go out the back. She refused. She said there was nowhere to go. Every cottage in the village was barred. The workhouse was miles away. The door gave way. the creature stepped through, hunched under the low frame. Peat still clung to its skin. Its eyes, pale and unblinking, swept across the room. It moved toward my father first. My father raised the knife Declan had dropped. The blade was short and dull. He held it steady. The creature did not slow. It reached out with one long arm and knocked the knife aside. The blade clattered against the wall. It took my father by the shoulders and lifted him off the ground. My father kicked once, then went still. The creature brought him close, its face inches from his. It breathed in, a long, slow pull, and my father's body sagged. When it set him down, my father was still alive, but barely. His eyes rolled back. His skin had gone gray. He did not move when he hit the floor. The creature turned toward my mother. Seamus grabbed a piece of firewood and swung it at the creature's head. The wood connected with a dull crack. The creature's head snapped to the side. It turned slowly back toward Seamus. Its expression did not change. It struck Seamus across the chest. The blow lifted him off his feet and threw him against the wall. He slid to the floor and did not rise. My mother pushed my sister behind her and backed toward the corner. I moved between them and the creature. It looked at me with those pale eyes and tilted its head. It stepped forward. I had nothing to use as a weapon. I raised my fists. The creature reached for me. Then my sister screamed. It was not a scream of fear. It was high and piercing, the cry of a child starving and sick and at the edge of death. The creature stopped. It turned its head toward her. For a moment, it stood still. Then it moved past me. It bent over my sister and looked down at her. She stared back, too weak to run, too tired to cry out again. The creature extended one hand and touched her forehead. It pulled back. The hand trembled. The creature stepped away. It looked at my sister again, then at my mother, then at me. Something passed across its face that might have been recognition, or might have been disgust. It turned and walked to the door. It stepped through, bent under the frame, and disappeared into the rain. We did not move for a long time. When I finally went to the door, the creature was gone. I saw no prints in the mud. I heard no sound from the bog. My father lived 3 more days. He did not wake. He breathed in shallow gasps, and his pulse grew weaker each hour. On the 3rd night, he stopped breathing altogether. Seamus recovered, though he could not use his left arm again. He left the village a month later and went to Cork. I never heard from him after that. My mother and sister and I stayed. We cut peat from a different section of the bog. We sold what we could and ate what we found. By summer, the first relief shipments arrived. We survived, but we never went near that section of the bog again. Other families did. I heard reports over the years. A man found dead near the old cut, his body drained and gray. A woman who went to gather peat and never returned. Her family found her at the edge of the water, eyes open, skin cold, but no mark on her. The priest came back after the famine ended. I told him what we had found. He said the old texts spoke of such things. Creatures from before Christianity came to Ireland. Giants and demons that slept in the earth and woke when the land suffered. He said they fed on despair and death. He said the famine had called it forth. He asked if I thought it was still there. I said I did not know. But I knew the bog still held its dead, and I knew some of those dead did not rest. I am 70 years old now. The famine ended long ago. The fields grow green again. But the bog country of County Mayo remains unchanged. Local families still avoid the section where we found the body. They say the peat there will not burn properly. They say it smells of old death. I kept a small piece of the leather skin that clung to my hand that day. I look at it sometimes and remember. What we pulled from that bog was older than memory, and it waits there still. If this account from 1847 left you unsettled, please leave a like and help others discover these forgotten encounters. Subscribe to Dust and Bones for more historical horror stories from famine times, colonial eras, and the dark periods when the desperate met the unexplained. Drop a comment and let us know where you are watching from. Next time, we journey to the Texas plains, where cowboys on a cattle drive faced something with wings wide enough to blot out the sun. Until then, stay curious,